Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD Masterclass. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe. Hope you're all doing well on this Friday afternoon, potentially even Saturday morning for some of you. If you are tuning in live here on Behance, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Wade and Umacorn and Nabil, Drew, Laura, Tim, Cody, Julia, who just wrapped up the Illustrator Daily Challenge, Jack, Robert, great to see all of you. Hope you're all excited for the weekend. And of course, another Masterclass number 72. I'm going to go ahead and hop over to my screen. We are going to be continuing the UI kit that we started 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago, or was it last week? I don't remember anymore. It might have been just last week. We started building out the sign-in screen and the two-factor verification screen. Today, we're going to be expanding upon that a little bit more. If I hop over to Safari for just a moment, here's what we're going to be working on today. We are going to be working on the home screen. 82. Yes, did I say something other than 82, Tim? I'm not sure. I can't keep track of which Masterclass this is. I think it's number 82. I could be wrong. So we're going to be building out the home screen of this UI kit, and it's kind of geared at a financial or wallet application for mobile devices. So we're going to be building things like a portfolio snapshot, quick actions, helpful tips, transactions, so on and so forth. And if you want to check out some other sneaks of this UI kit, definitely check out Instagram.com/Howard Pinsky, or you can search Howard Pinsky on Instagram. Here's a little bit of a hint at what we're going to be working on potentially next week, and definitely what's going to be released in the eventual UI kit. Again, transactions, we're going to have contacts, payment screens, all sorts of fun stuff. And I also posted a reel on how to create that sign-in screen. So definitely go there and check that out. All right, so let's go ahead and hop back over to Adobe XD, and we're going to get going. So we're kind of building off of what we've already started over the last week. I think Wade did confirm it was last week, possibly. Again, I don't know. I can't keep track of weeks or words, apparently. So we're going to be, working on this. We want to make sure to use the same dimensions for our screen sizes. So if I press the A key to grab the artboard tool, I'm going to go ahead and select the iPhone 13 12 Pro Max. And our background color we were using on these screens is a little bit of a linear gradient, right? Very, very subtle linear gradient. If you take a look here, there's the top color there, and then the bottom color is just a little bit darker. So what we're able to do is, with this second artboard selected, there are two ways to get this color over to this third. I can copy the artboard, Command and Control C, and then hop over here to this artboard, right click and paste appearance, or Command and Control Alt Option and then V. Now, the other way we can do it is if you have an artboard selected and you hop over to your document assets, which is this icon at the bottom left-hand corner, you can add the color right there. So you have easy access to it. And we didn't do much in terms of adding colors. We did talk about components last week, but you can also add additional colors like your highlight colors, your character styles, just like that. So if you needed to edit those character styles or those colors globally at some point in the future, you would just right-click, press Edit, and then make your changes, right? Now this color might be a little bit different, which is why it did not update, but I can just replace it like that. And now if I go ahead and press Edit, it'll change everywhere. All right, beautiful. Thank you, Wade, for posting that link. All right, so this again is going to be the home screen. And on this screen, like I showed earlier, we're gonna have a header at the top. We're gonna have some portfolio breakdowns. We're gonna have a navigation bar at the bottom. And ideally, you would probably block out a screen like this, make it very simple, work on the, low quality mockups first, and then you would move to more of a high fidelity look. We're just jumping straight into high fidelity, but you can definitely go do things like this, home, And you probably don't have to focus too much on typefaces when you are working on low fidelity. You know, just block things out, pop things all over the place, do a bunch of squares and rectangles and ellipses, but we're going to dive straight into high fidelity today. So at the top, we're going to start off with a header, which is going to indicate that this is home. We're going to add a few icons. On the left-hand side, there's going to be a plus button, you know, to add funds or to add contacts or to add whatever it might be. You can also use that area for a profile. And then there might be a messages icon over to the right. So, like I mentioned last week, you might have to keep in mind that on an iPhone, there's about, 45 or so pixels at the top that's more or less reserved for the good old notch. So definitely don't put anything up there that you want your users to interact with. So I'll just drag out a guide, and I'm going to drag out my guides here as well. Now I do have some guides on my other artboards. So what we're able to do if we wanted to is select one of those artboards. Under the view menu, we'll go down to guides and then copy guides. And then we'll hop over here and paste the guides, right? So it'll take all those guides from the artboard that we copied and pop them over here. All right. So again, like I mentioned at the top, we want some sort of indicator that this is the home screen. Now, in terms of the styling, we're going to continue with the same similar typefaces that we have been using. And Umicorn is saying that Belly font is looking better with time. I agree. It's a very interesting, it's a very different typeface, right? This one here, this is Belly Display, which we're going to be using in just a moment. It's different. I've talked about this before. Whether it's the right typeface to use for something like this, that remains to be seen. It's definitely good for display and large headers. Definitely don't want to use this for body copy because it can be very difficult to see. But for, larger headers, it could potentially work. So let's go ahead and try it over here. I'm going to change this over to Belly Display. We'll make this about 24 and we're going to make sure it's centered. Perfect, just like that. And I do want to make sure that I'm adding this to my character styles, and I can double click and rename this. I'll just rename this screen header so I can very easily use that on additional artboards. All right, so we've got our header looking pretty good. Now over to the left-hand side, we're going to want an icon to add. Now, of course, we can create very easily an icon ourselves, or we can hop into our icons and look up something like add. I'll grab this icon, copy it, and paste it. I'm going to change the color to white, and I'm going to take a look at the preview. Now, I talk about this a lot, right? When you're zoomed in like this, I designed very much zoomed in a lot. You really can't grasp how things look when you're actually previewing them, right? So definitely go ahead and hit that play button at the top just to kind of get a better glimpse as to what it's looking like. You can also plug your phone directly into your computer and have a live preview. It's looking a little bit small and potentially a little bit light. So I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to lock the aspect ratio. I'm going to turn off responsive resize because I believe this is a border-based icon, so it might skew some of those lines a little bit. And let's try bumping it up to 24. And I'm going to bump up the weight and the size of the border to about 2. And I think that looks a little bit better. So we'll leave it at that. We'll make sure everything lines up really nicely. And then over to the right-hand side, we're going to want some sort of a messages or chat icon. So if I look up maybe chat or message, there we go. I'm going to copy this one, paste it. We're going to go for 24 as well, and white, and pop it over to the right. Now, some of you might be asking, I don't have these icons. Where do I get icons from? So these icons in particular were licensed from UI8. I have a bunch of icon libraries in Nucleo, which is a third-party icon manager. But if you do not, definitely hop over to your plugins at the bottom. You can add plugins at the top, and then go to Icons for Design, which is a fantastic plugin. You can search for something like message or chat. And you have all these open source icons that you can use freely in your projects, which is amazing. Now, one more thing I might want to add to this particular icon up here is maybe a notification badge. So if I dive in here, I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, draw one out. And typically badges are, some sort of a red, and it looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit of a border. I'm going to add the background color, maybe on the outside, and bump it up in size just a little bit. And that's not bad. We can definitely keep it at that red color, or we can experiment. Considering we're using this purplish bluish color, we can experiment with that as well, just to kind of give this application a nice cohesive look. And then completely optional, you can also add a number inside this badge if you have like 1 notification or 17 or whatever it might be, right? All right, Justin is saying live preview on phone, tablet is a must. So at the moment, you can do live preview on your phone or tablet by plugging your phone directly in with a USB cable, or if you have the Adobe XD app on your phone and you're saving to the cloud, you can also preview it there. It won't be live, unfortunately, but you can refresh it and then check that out. Maybe one day we'll have live over Wi-Fi, but at the moment, just pop it in with a USB cable. We should all have some lying around, and you'll be good to go. All right, so we have our header looking pretty good. Now it looks a little bit large, this text at the top. I might just bump it down just a little bit. And then I'm going to make sure to group these elements and call this header. All right. So now down below, we want to start laying out some of the content for this particular screen. And one thing I kind of like, depending if you have room or not, is on the home screen when an application just says hello. It's kind of fun. Maybe it's a personal thing. I don't know. Let me know in the chat if you like that as well. But if I go into an application that says hello, or it gives me some sort of fun saying of some sort, it's kind of fun, right? So I'm going to grab my text tool. I'm going to draw out a box across. So I'm, limiting it a little bit. And then I'll type out something like, good morning. It's not even how to spell. Good morning, Howard. Now I probably don't want it centered, right? I likely don't want it on that side. So I'm going to just left align it just like that. I might want to bump it up in size a little bit. It's not too bad. I don't want to go too much, only because we have a lot of content to put down below. So we're going to keep it around 26. I might bump up the line height a little bit, maybe to about 40. 40 might be too, it's not too bad actually. Maybe I'll keep it at 40. We'll see what that looks like. And then I'm going to bump this down 32. Not too bad. All right, Cornell is asking, why do you need a live preview on your phone if you can preview your projects? So Cornell, that's actually a very good question. So what Cornell is asking is, why would you need a live preview on your phone like this, right? When you just have this play button at the top and you can kind of put this wherever you want. There's something very different psychologically and also visually as well about previewing what your design looks like on a device like this than on your screen, right? Obviously on your screen, it's a lot bigger, and it's kind of, even though you can kind of see everything in the same window, it still feels different, right? On the phone, you can see the notch, you can see the home indicator at the bottom, you can see what it actually looks like in your hand. And there have been many times where I have, been designing on my computer, everything looks beautiful in the device preview on the desktop. Then I get in my hand and I realize the typefaces are too small. Some of the images are too small. This doesn't work properly. It just doesn't appear like it should, right? And that's why it's so important to preview on the device that you're designing for. It just gives you a better experience. And like Drew just mentioned, being able to touch the work really does make a big difference. All right, so we've got our lovely saying at the top, good morning, Howard, that is me. And then right below, I want to give a bit of a preview, like a breakdown of what this user's portfolio is looking like. There are a lot of ways to do this, right? But I want to keep it nice and compact so that they can get a very quick overview of what. So Nabil is asking how many types of colors. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Clarify that and let me know. So I want to give the users a very quick overview of what their portfolio looks like, but I don't want to take up too much space. So we're going to get a bit creative with this. I'm going to start with my rectangle and draw one out. We're going to draw a container like this. I am going to round out the corners a little bit. We don't want to go too much. Somewhere around 8. And if you want to keep it very subtle, you can go for maybe about 4. I mean, that's very subtle. So I think 8 could work. And then we're going to keep this container relatively subtle. So we're going to go for somewhat of a gray with a little bit of blue in it. And then for the border, also going to keep this fairly subtle. We can definitely tweak those colors later. We'll probably need to tweak those colors. Doesn't look too bad. I might darken it a touch, but we're going to see how that looks. And then we want a few things. On the left-hand side, we might want an overview of the cards that are available from this user, whether they be credit cards, reward cards, whatever it might be. And then over to the right, we're going to have the snapshot of the portfolio. So I'm going to start by drawing out a rectangle. And this is going to be the first card. Now, we could sit here and, create cards ourselves. We could keep it very simple and just add a color and then maybe round out the corners a little bit, some around 4, right? But I do have in my libraries, I have some cards that I licensed. These were also from UI8, but you can also grab them from Adobe stock. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So Nabil clarified RGB or CMYK. So at the moment, there's no color management in Adobe XD. Their team is definitely looking into it, and hopefully we can get around to that this year. But at the moment, no color management. I believe it goes by your system and monitor color space. So I did license these. I also edited them a little bit. So I'm going to just pop that in there. So we have a nice card. And to give a little bit of variation, what I'm also going to do is duplicate this, drag in another one, and maybe just rotate a little bit by about 15 degrees. You can hold down your shift key to rotate by 15 degrees at a time, which is nice. Move that behind, and now we have our cards in place. All right, now over to the right, we're going to want our snapshot. Now we want to make sure that the users know what this section is. Now, of course, we can assume that they might know what it is by adding some, numbers of our portfolio, right? But I like adding headers just so that they really know. So something like portfolio snapshot. Now, here's where you have to start thinking about your typefaces, right? We've been using belly display for some of our headers and our good morning message. But if we make this smaller, which we're definitely going to have to do to fit inside of this container, let's say about 14 for now, and we preview. Look at the difference, right? Where it says Good Morning Howard, for the most part, you can see it not too bad. Again, like we talked about earlier, still not quite convinced that this is the right typeface to use for an application like this, but it's mostly legible. Down here, especially zoomed out, not so much. So for the body copy, I have been using the Alvaretta, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a nice typeface. Still has a nice style to it, but it's a lot easier to read when it's a lot smaller. So if I change this over to something like semi-bold, even if I drop it about 2 extra pixels to about 12, still legible, right? And for this, I might change it all over to caps. And possibly, I might drop the color a little bit. Just so that the header kind of blends in a little bit, or we can just keep it at white. We will see how that looks. Mayur is saying, do we really need color, document color mode for XD? We'd rather have pages in hue and saturation. So it's that's also an interesting question, Mayur. For things like mobile apps, possibly not, but there are a lot of people who use XD for marketing purposes. Some people use it for print because it, for the most part, is vector based. So you can definitely use it for things like that. And of course, some people have their monitors set at a different color space, and they want maybe XD to be sRGB, right? So they want a little bit of a differentiation there. Who knows, right? There are lots of reasons you might want to use that. All right, so we have our header, and we're going to definitely tweak this as we go. And then below, we might want a quick overview of how much, maybe what your portfolio value is. So in this case, I don't know, it might be $1,921 total value. I'm going to remove the caps here, and we might want to bump this up a little bit because it does have a little bit more weight than the header at the top. So maybe let's bump it up to about 18. We'll see what that looks like. And I might bump up the weight as well. All right. Now below, what I want to do is kind of give a breakdown of where this value is coming from, right? An application like this, and many applications these days that have wallets and things like that, there's so many different sources that your money can come from. It's not just cash anymore, it's stocks and crypto and all these different things, right? So we want to break some of that down. And, we can definitely list it all out vertically. We can make this fancy circle, which we're going to eventually do in the, I think it's the transactions page. But this section here is meant to be very condensed. So I'm thinking we might want to lay this out horizontally instead. So I'm going to grab the line tool. We're going to start the process by dragging a line out like this. And this is kind of where our three primary colors for our transactions are going to come into play. So we really want to focus on nailing down these colors. And of course, ideally, you would do this probably earlier stages when you're creating your design system, but sometimes they pop into mind and they start kind of developing as you're working on this application, right? So we might want to do this one will be probably for cash. So we'll do maybe like this greenish with a little bit of blue in here. Maybe I'll round out the caps a little bit. There we go. I will set the size at about 2. And that looks pretty good. And then down below, we're going to want to indicate how much of the portfolio comes from cash and also that it is cash. We want users to, we don't want to assume that users know that green is cash, right? We want to make sure to set the stage for the rest of the application, considering this is the home screen. So we'll do something like maybe $1,204 comes from cash, right? And we'll make this quite a bit smaller. So we'll drop this down to about maybe 10. We'll keep it at bold. And then maybe either right beside or right below, we'll see. We'll type out the word cash. Semi-bold, maybe I'll drop it a little bit. And maybe I'll drop the opacity or color as well. Now, this also goes back to what I think Cornell was asking about why it's so important to preview on a mobile device, right? If I take a look here, it's a lot bigger, right? I'm looking at this on, I think, a 24, 27-inch monitor, and I can definitely see the word cache. Right now, I think it's set, the font size set to about 8. It looks okay. But once you actually preview this on your phone, it's completely different sometimes. And that word cache, again, which is right here, may be way too small to see. Now, we don't want to focus too much on that word, but you also want it to be visible. So definitely preview when you can on your devices, just to make sure that everything is nice and legible. All right, so what I want to do now is start setting up our stacks. And this is just going to make our editing life so much easier for many different reasons. And you're going to see we're going to have a stack and a stack, and maybe even stacks and stacks and stacks. So in this case here, I have 1204 and I have cache. But the next line item it might be stocks. And considering if you do 1921 minus 1204, I don't know what that is, but the next line item is going to be a lot less. It's probably going to be under 1,000, right? So if I were to go 910, all of a sudden I have this big gap in between 910 and cash, which in the next one will be stocks. I'm gonna have to move this over manually. Don't want to deal with that, right? So I'm gonna select both of these items here, Command and Control G to pop them into a group. I'm gonna call this asset. And then over within my properties inspector, I'm gonna enable a stack. Now it's automatically going to convert that into a horizontal stack, which is exactly what I want in this case. Or maybe it's not, right? One thing that we might have to keep in mind, here it looks good, right? Because we have this line that kind of extends past the word cash. But as an example, I'm gonna drag this over. The next one, like I mentioned, might be 901 or something like that, right? But now we have, and this might be much shorter because it's less than our green line. Now we have this kind of word, which in this case is going to be changed to stocks. It's kind of hanging off the right side, which looks a little bit strange. So we may actually want a vertical stack instead. We might want to stack these two items vertically on top of each other. And what's kind of cool is if you just select this group and change the stack, it'll pop it down there for you, which is wonderful. I think the spacing looks pretty good. I think I'm going to keep it at that. I might want to move this down a little bit. Perfect. And I'm going to group these items and call this cash. Now, what I also want are two more going across. So we're going to have stocks and crypto as well. So if I take this group that I just created and pop it into a larger group, Command and Control G one more time, I will call this assets. Now I can go ahead and turn another stack on. And now I have a horizontal stack. I have a vertical stack inside of a horizontal stack. So if I dive in here and duplicate, I now have another one. So here we can go ahead and do something like, maybe this will be like 491. This will be stocks. And we're going to want to make sure that this line is definitely a bit shorter. And we're going to change to our next color. And this will be somewhat of a blue in this range here. And then we're going to do one more. Make sure to name this and then duplicate. And this one is going to be crypto. So I'm going to make this smaller and we'll do about 226. And we'll change this color to our third color, which will be more of like a pinkish red right about here. And just like I did with some of the other assets, I want to make sure to add these colors because we're going to be using these colors quite a bit in our designs. There we go. Now, another advantage of using stacks, I mean, there are many advantages of using stacks, right? Is I can dive in here and let's say I wanted to, for some reason, swap the position. All I have to do is, move them around, right? And they just swap automatically. Or if I decided that maybe this green line is too short, it doesn't really represent how much cash we have compared to the other assets, I can grab the line here and drag it on out. And it's going to automatically push those other assets over to the right because I'm resizing it that way, which is great. All right, so how is this looking? Not too bad. Things are a little bit squishy, I think. I think the header at the top looks a bit squishy. It also stands out a little bit more than I would like. Of course, you have to be careful with accessibility. Dropping it this much in opacity or color could be a little bit hard to read, so keep that in mind. I might also want to bump this up to bold. Let me darken this just a touch. Possibly, we'll see. We're definitely going to tweak the colors as we go, but I'm going to make sure to group all these elements and call this snapshot. All right. Whoops. I'm going to make sure to center this information. I'm also going to give it a bit of breathing room on the left, aside from the cards. It's looking okay. One more thing we can potentially do, considering we have our greens, we have our blues, we have our pinks, right? I might want to put a little bit of a gray. This probably doesn't make much sense, but I might want to put a little bit of a gradient on this particular container, a very subtle gradient, maybe starting from green at the top left. And when I say green, I don't mean like green, right? That's the wrong side too. I don't mean green. Although it's a blue. I mean, I don't hate that actually. Now, I don't like it with the colors on top of it, but the actual container itself doesn't look too bad with that green. It could be a kind of nice shake-up, right? I'm going to duplicate this actually, just so we have another option. I don't hate it. We can do something like, now the white on the green, I don't know if it's working. And then of course we can't use our green and blue and pink in this particular area. So Justin's saying, yeah, you might. It just makes it difficult when you start introducing very vibrant colors. But what I was trying to get at is, it could be kind of interesting to add a little bit of like a dark green up here, and then maybe like a dark purple. I'm channeling Justin again. Or maybe it wouldn't be cool at all. We'll stick with this. All right. It's a contrast issue now. Yes, I completely agree, Wade. Whenever you get these bright, vibrant colors, very difficult to work with. All right. One more thing I might want to mention is, we have a stack in a stack, right? So we have stacks and stacks here, but we can also add a stack to the overall group. So we have this entire group containing all this information. We can turn a stack on, or we can simply turn padding on if we wanted to, which is going to look at the background container, which is this guy here, and everything else around it or on top of it. So if we did want to maybe enlarge the cards for whatever reason, or we want to add additional line items down below, the container will automatically resize. Now, in this case, probably don't want to do that, but I'm going to keep padding on just in case we do need to enlarge it at some point in the future. All right, now, next section down here, we might want to add some quick actions. So user opens up the application, they want to do something very quickly. They might want to send some money, receive some money, trade some of their stocks or crypto, or add some funds to their account. So we're going to kick off this section with a header, something like quick actions. And we're going to stick with the Alvarado typeface. Maybe I'll bump it to semi-bold and bump it up in size a little bit. That could potentially work. And then we want to make sure we have maybe like, let's say 4 quick actions going across. Now, of course, you can have 3, you can have 5. I wouldn't go much more than 5 because then it becomes very squishy. So I want to make sure that I can have 4 of them going across. So what I like to do is grab my rectangle and draw one all the way across just like this. And we'll say in the properties inspector, we're going to, let me zoom in here, divide by 4, which will ensure that 4 of them fit perfectly across from guide to guide. But then I also want to make sure that we have some breathing room. So I can -8 or -4 or 6 or whatever it might be. So I'll do something, and then I'll round it probably, about 82 and 82, just so I have a nice square. And then I'll go ahead and round the corners. Let's try about 8. And for the styling of this, of course we could go fairly simple. But one thing I like for quick actions, especially if those quick actions relate to very specific but different things, like sending money and receiving money, is to color code them. So we're going to let's start with a border. And let's go ahead and apply maybe like a pinkish. And we could also use our pink color that we just defined. And then maybe on the inside, just so it's not completely hollow, we might want to sample this color. I could also apply it from the document assets and then maybe just do a darker version of it. So it almost looks like, it has like this neon feel to it. It's kind of fun. And then if you remember, last week, we started exploring this style where we have these lines that are kind of broken up. They don't serve a purpose other than visual identity. So we might want to kind of start pulling that in as well throughout the application. Not too much, but very subtly. So something like this, we can experiment down here at the bottom of our properties inspector with our dashes and our gaps. Now, you could just bump this up to maybe 80 and then drop the gap until you have something that looks interesting. And then if you want, depending on your design style, personal preference, you can also round out the caps and you have something that looks like this, right? You can also place it on the inside, the outside, the center, completely up to, center looks kind of nice. Completely up to you. We'll stick with that. Chris says, so nice when Adobe does math calculation. Chris, you have no idea. I think I've mentioned this before. I think I failed, was it grade 12 math or grade 9 math or grade something math twice. I had a terrible math teacher, but still, I'm just not good at math. So if the properties inspector can do math for me, love it. All right. Next, on the inside, we might want an icon to indicate, in this case, it would be sending money probably. So I'm going to hop back over to Nucleo because I'm lazy to create an icon. You can very easily create an icon though, but type out arrow, and we've got some arrows here. Let's see, we also have a bunch of different icon sets we can pull from. This could work. And we want to make sure that the sending icon and receiving icon are similar, but also different, right? So sending is usually, for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, but sending is usually to the right. It kind of goes up and to the right. I don't know why. And then receiving down to the left. So we're going to make sure we're going to rotate it a little bit by about 45 degrees. Place this in the center. A little bit small, so I'm going to make sure to enlarge it a touch. I'm also going to bump up the weight. Let's try about 2, maybe 3. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger as well. That could potentially work. And then right below or on top, we are going to write the word send, just so that users know exactly what this is. Because, in this case, in some cases it may not matter. But in this case, if you have the send icon, and very quickly, let me show you. So you have a send icon, and then you have a receive icon, which in this, we're going to eventually make it green, but as an example, right? Some users may be able to look at this and say, okay, great. The first one is send, the second one is receive. But a lot of users may look at this and think, I have no idea which one is which, and they may press the wrong one, or they may just give up completely. So sometimes labels are not necessary, but in this case, I think it's definitely necessary to add a label down here. So we're going to do send, and that looks pretty good. All right, so now what we want to do is want a few additional quick actions going across. Drew says, could be an expensive mistake. Yes, that is very, if your user experience is not good in an application like this, your users will suffer, trust me. So I'm going to make sure to group these items, call this send, and I'm also going to place this one into another group and call this actions. And this will allow me to, like the area above, create a stack and then boop, duplicate. And now we can work on our receiving. So this down here will be receive. Now I should make sure to center this. I'll center this one as well. And then for our colors, we're going to pull in our green. So I'm going to apply this as a border. I'm also going to apply this as the main color. But like on our previous one, we want to view. I'm going to drop this color a little bit so it matches. And then we want to essentially reverse this icon. So flip it and flip it. There we go. Now the next one, we're going to want maybe trading. So you can trade your stocks, you can trade your crypto, all that fun stuff. Same process. Trade. And we do have the blue that we've been using. So we're going to apply and something like that. Now for this one, this icon doesn't make much sense, but we can still use the arrow to create a trade icon, right? So what we can do is maybe we'll rotate it like this, and then we'll duplicate and rotate another one, or flip it, and we'll just do maybe like a swap kind of icon, right? And then I'll just make this a little bit smaller. Something like that. Let me take a quick peek. It's okay. It's not perfect, but it's I think it'll do for now, right? I'm also not loving this color completely. I might want to tweak the color. Now, if I right click and press edit, I can very easily tweak it here because I'm not using the exact same color on the background, which I could do, but I'm not at the moment. I can tweak it there. Maybe I can apply this here and maybe drop the opacity. That could work as well. All right, that'll do. We'll see how that looks. And then finally, one more icon, and this is going to be add. So this will allow you to add funds to your account. And this one doesn't really use any of our three primary colors. So I'll do something like maybe an orange. And then we'll want to make sure to use that orange possibly throughout the rest of the application whenever adding funds is spoken about. And then for the icon, we'll probably do something simple like a plus button. So I'll grab the line tool, draw one out, and round out those caps. We'll duplicate, we will rotate it 90 degrees. There we go. That could work. Now, what I want to make sure that it lines up nicely with our guide on the left. So if I go back to our parent group, which is our actions group, I'm just going to bump up the spacing. There we go. Beautiful. All right, and we have our quick actions looking pretty good. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to tackle is right below this quick action section. We may want to offer up the user a tip. Maybe the application is keeping track of their finances, and it might want to let them know that, hey, you spent a lot of money last month, or there's an investment opportunity, or whatever it might be, right? So right down here, we might want to do something like helpful tip. There might be multiple. If anyone has suggestions for a better name for this particular section, definitely let me know, and maybe we'll replace that. And then here, we're going to do something very similar to the first section, but not as large. So we'll do a rectangle that going across, and what we can do is, if we do like the style of this particular container, I can click on it, copy it to my clipboard, Command and Control C, hop down here, and right click and paste appearance. Perfect. All right, now inside here, very similar to this section, we might want to kick it off with some sort of a visual or an icon, and then we're going to have the actual financial tip over to the right. So I'll go ahead and draw out a rectangle, making sure that it is evenly spaced, and if I go ahead and hold down my Alt-Option key, I can see that it's 12, 12, and 12, which is great. I can also use padding for something similar as well. Rebecca is saying, wish we could have an in-person workshop like when Max was in person. Oh, yeah, I agree. I'm hoping at some point we'll get back to in-person learning. Obviously I love online and teaching masterclasses, teaching Adobe Max online. It just reaches so many people, but there's something special about meeting people in person. Rebecca and I met, I think it was 2 years ago, I think, at Adobe Max. whenever the last Max that was in person, I think. Possibly 3 years ago, I don't remember. But yeah, there's just something special about meeting people in person, seeing their faces there. Slightly terrifying sometimes, but also kind of fun. So we've got our container, and then maybe we'll just drop the color a little bit so it's like that. And then inside here, let me see if I have any fun icons for money. I think I do somewhere, possibly, maybe not. That's not bad. Not bad. There's a money bag, I suppose, maybe. Maybe this one. Could be kind of fun, but probably not. I don't know. I'm going to leave this blank for now. I don't want to spend too much time finding icons, but eventually an icon will go in this section. But over to the right, we want to write out our actual tip. So I'm going to click and drag to define our box, and I'm going to left align it and do something like you spent $1,200 whatever more than last month. Just to kind of give them a heads up, they're probably spending a little bit too much money. And in terms of the styling of this one, I'm gonna drop this a little bit. And what I think would be kind of cool is to really emphasize and focus on, the big numbers here. So something like, we might want to keep this at maybe either semi-bold or medium, but the dollar value and then maybe the word more, maybe we'll bump that up to bold, just to really shove it in their face, right? That they spent a little bit too much money compared to last month. And then finally, over to the right, we might want to include an arrow or like a caret or something like that, because they might want to see more information. And it's a nice visual to let them know that they can tap on this to see something else. If we just leave it at this, assuming there's an icon here, right? If we just leave it at this, they may not know that you can actually, tap on this section to see more information. So if you, whoops, I pressed something different. So if you look up something like, can't spell properly, arrow, and we'll do, there we go. Move that over to the right. Maybe I'll bump this up in size a little bit. I might have to bump it up. Yeah, it's a little bit too small. Like that. Maybe I'll bump it up in a little bit more. Right, so if you have something like this, all of a sudden users will be able to see this arrow and they'll know that if they tap on this section, they'll be taken somewhere else and they'll see more information about this particular spending tip, right? Car is saying, saw the new pic of your office. It's so fancy. I can't wait to show more of it. But very quickly before we wrap things up. Yeah, so we've been working on this new studio for, we're doing our entire basement, but the studio is part of it. It's been a process. It's been about 5 months, and there's a lot more that isn't in this picture, but it was a fun project, and I can't wait to. I think over the weekend I'm going to move all my stuff down there so I can start filming and streaming from that office, which is very exciting. All right, now the last thing we're going to tackle before we wrap up. Let me actually make sure to group, call this tips. And then the last thing is we are going to have a section down below about recent transactions. Now, obviously, there's going to be a separate page for transactions to see all of your transactions. You'll be able to filter them, so on and so forth. But we may want, a very quick breakdown of some of the most recent ones. So if I duplicate this entire group downwards, recent transactions. There we go. And we might be able to use the same container just to give some consistency, right? Now the icon to the left, even though we don't have an icon in this section here, what we can do is, because the transactions are going to fall in maybe receiving, sending, and possibly spending, or even trading, we can use the same styling for that we've been using up here, right? So we can copy this and paste the appearance. Now I might want to bring back the rounded corners a little bit to about 4. And then for the icon, I can turn this into a component. And pop it right there. I can do the same thing for our sending component, and then maybe trading as well, just so that I have them saved in my document assets. And if I decide to make changes to those particular icons, they're going to propagate throughout the entire application. This will be trading, this is going to be send, and then receive. Perfect. All right, everyone's asking about the lights. So those lights are actually, they're from Amazon. They're the Govee lights, Govee, I think. The Govee Lyra or L, something like that. They do look like lightsabers though, which is kind of nice. All right, so we have our icon right there, looking pretty good. And then on the transactions, we might want to switch it up a little bit from the the format of the tip at the top. So we're going to have 2 different line items going down, and then we're going to have some over to the right-hand side. So on the top, it might be something like received from, I'm going to pull a name from the chat, Wade. There we go. And I might bold this or semi-bold, and then below that, we might want to put some secondary information, such as the date. What is the date today? February. Wow. I cannot spell when I'm streaming. 4th, 2022. And maybe I will boop, drop that in size a little bit. Maybe drop it in weight just a touch. That could work. 16 might be too squishy. And then over to the right, we're going to want to include some information about the financial transaction that occurred. So if I duplicate this over, maybe this, so this is, I think, receiving. So maybe Wade sent me $48 for whatever reason. Thank you, Wade. Appreciate it. And then below this, we may want to have a very quick visual as to what the status of this transaction is. So is it pending? Is it completed? Whatever it might be, right? So very quickly, before we wrap up, I will round this out a little bit. Maybe this will be pending. So we'll do something like this. I'm gonna have to definitely tweak this color a little bit. Pending. And maybe we'll do like that, maybe semi-bold. And considering the background is like this orangish, well, maybe we'll do something like that, maybe, possibly. And then I'm going to group this, turn padding on, so that way I can very easily make changes to this as we need to, right? Oh, for Howard's boba tea. Yes, I'm going to get boba on the weekend. Now I'm craving, thanks Umacorn. I am craving boba now. All right, that could work. And the final thing we're going to do is, maybe we also want a little bit of a visual of, who sent this. Even though Wade's name is there, we may want to include a visual of Wade himself. Now, I don't have a picture of Wade lying around on my computer. That'd be kind of strange. But if I go ahead and create maybe a shape right here, round that out a little bit. Maybe I will sample the background for the border, just so I have a little bit of a notch. And then if I hop over to Finder, I'm going to grab an image. Let's say, which image will stand out? This one here. Boop, pop that in there. And now I have a little bit of a visual. So we have our send icon or receive icon, which gives us a visual that we received money. We have a visual of the person sending, we have the person's name, and we have the status over to the right-hand side. So we're giving users as much information as we can. And of course, if they wanted to tap on this to see more information or go to their transaction page, they'll be able to do that as well. And here's where things are looking. Definitely have a lot more work to do. We're going to tackle a lot of that next week, but that's going to wrap things up for me for today. Kyle T. Webster is coming up in just a few moments, but big thank you to Eva and Wade and Cornell, Rob, and where to go? Benjamin, Kara, Laura, Umacorn. Great to see all of you. Can't wait to see you all again next week. And until then, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you then.